Hi, welcome to Ikate's Crossing as we continue our exploration of Secret of Shambhala, the Secret of Shambhala, in search of the 11th insight. Okay, we're up to chapter 8, and this is part 2 of chapter 8. So let's have a look at what today's message is in regards to this. Let's have a look, see what we get here. Whoa, okay, so what card flew out? 10 of Wands. 10 of Wands is about burdens. I think it's about pushing through, releasing those burdens, taking that commitment to work hard, to do what's necessary in your journey. 5 of Swords is about that sense of a win-win energy, maybe dealing with some quarrels or some disagreements, maybe some things mentally that you don't agree with. And so you've got the King of Cups. Might be important to take a practical approach to your emotions, to allow yourself to dream where you want to be. Think about where you want to be, dream about where you want to be, and what's your focus. Be kind, be generous, having that sense of, you can be caring and energy and everything like that coming on here. So let's have a look. Whoa. Okay, tells us that there's a lot to learn in this process. There is a lot to learn as we go through. And it's going to take some real strength, some inner power, some courage to do what's necessary, to push through those challenges, those things that are weighing you down, maybe to do with some disagreements or some conflicts in some way, some arguments. It does feel as though there is that sense of have this dream of being kind, being generous, compassionate, allowing yourself to maybe put your emotions to one side so that you're able to know what you need to learn. There's a lot for you to learn right now, so it's going to take some courage, some strength, and choosing the way you react too is really important. To be in moderation, not be in excess of reaction, making sure that you stay calm, stay serene, and take a breath in this journey as well. It's going to be super important. Okay, so what card are we going to focus on here? We've got, it's very important to be in alignment, to stay centered. I think it could be about working with your chakras is going to be really, really important process here. To be working with your chakras, to work with being centered, being calm, allowing yourself, again, I get that sense of taking that breath. Not rushing the process too, making sure that you're staying calm, staying centered in this process. Really important here. Okay, so let's have a read of this. What number are we up to? 32. So let's have a read on what this says. Okay, 32 in alignment center. All the scattered sounds begin to harmonize. All the bouncing colours align when I'm drawn in. Bring your attention to your breath. Feel it take you into your centre. Let it scan your physical body. It knows what parts you need to soften and what needs to be strengthened. Let the breath move through your emotional field, awakening what is sleeping. Passing through the landscape of your mind, let the breath show you how you are how you are obsessing. When you do not have order within, you do not have the clarity to speak and act in ways which create harmony in the world. When you are anchored in your center, you become magnetic, and all the elements around you seek to find a balance. You are the agent of your own frequency. What are you aligning yourself with? Notice all of the threads that are pulling you out of your center and start to weave them back in. Come home to your breath. Wow, what a message. So let us continue this. Part 2. Okay, let's continue. I was about to ask more about what they did at the temples when the door to Tashi's room swung open. Tashi came out, followed by his father. Father wants to see you, Tashi said, looking at me. The older man bowed slightly, and Tashi introduced us. Then both sat down at the table. Tashi's father was dressed in the traditional sheepskin pants and vest of a Tibetan herdsman, except that his clothing was immaculately clean and a light tan colour. He was short and stocky and looked at me with kind eyes, an expression of boyish enthusiasm. "You know that Shambhala is about to go into transition?" he asked. I looked at Arnie and then back at him. "Only what some of the legends say." "The legends say," the older man replied, "that at a precise time in the evolution of Shambhala and the outer cultures, a great shift will occur. This shift only happens when a level of awareness in the outer cultures has reached a particular point. But when it does, Shambhala will move." "Move where?" I asked. "Do you know?" He smiled. "No one knows exactly." His statement filled me with a wave of anxiety for some reason, and a slight dizziness. For a moment I had a hard time focusing my eyes. "He's still not that strong yet," Arnie said. Tashi's father looked at me. "I'm here because of my intuition, that it is important that Tashi joins us at the temples during this transition. The legends say it will be a time of great opportunity, but also of dire peril. For a time, what we have been doing here in the temples will be disrupted. We will not be able to help as much." He looked over at his son. "This will happen just as the situation in the outer cultures become critical. Many times during the hidden history of mankind, humans have developed spiritually to this point, and then have lost their way and fallen back into ignorance. They begin to misuse their technology, disrupting the natural course of evolution. For instance, right now in the outer cultures, some people are taking the natural process of food and distorting it by genetically manipulating seeds to have unnatural characteristics. This is primarily done in order to patent these seeds and control them in the marketplace. The same thing is occurring in the pharmaceutical industries, where a known herbal remedy, free to all, is genetically altered in order to sell it in the precise energy system of the body. These manipulations can have terrible consequences on health. The same is true of irradiated foods, chlorine, and other additives to the water supply, not to mention so-called designer drugs. At the same time, the technology of the media has reached a point where it can have dramatic influence. If it responds only to the needs of corporations and corrupt politicians, it can create realities for humans that are distorted and unnatural. As corporations merge so that they control more and more of the technology and want to use more advertising to create false needs, thus problems will grow. Most imperative is the situation of government power and surveillance, even in the democratic countries. Citing a need to combat drug dealers or terrorists, the government has infringed more and more on the privacy of the common man. Although already cash transactions are being restricted and the internet fully monitored, the next step will be forcing the move to a cashless society controlled by a central authority. This growth towards a central, spiritless government authority in a high-tech virtual world, divorced from natural processes where food, water, and the routines of living have been trivialized and distorted, leads to disaster. When health is subverted into just one more commercial cycle of worsening food, new diseases, and more drugs. Armageddon is the result, and it has occurred several times in prehistory. It could happen again, only this time on a much larger scale. He smiled over at Arnie. "But it need not happen. In fact, we are one small step in awareness from turning the corner. If we could just move fully into the idea that we are spiritual beings in a spiritual world, then food, health, technology, media, and government would all move into their proper roles in the evolution and perfection of this world. But for this to happen, the prayer extensions must be completely understood in the outer cultures. They must understand what we do at the temples. The transition of Shambhala is part of this process, but the opportunity has to be seized." He looked deeply at Tashi. "For this to happen, your generation must merge with the last two into an integrated prayer field, one that includes a final unity of all the religions." Tashi looked confused, and his father moved closer to him. "All over the world, the generation born in the first decades of the 20th century What our friend from the West would call the World War II generation used courage and technology to save democracy and freedom from the threat of dictators seeking empire. They won using technological might and continued to expand this technology into a worldwide economy. Then the next generation, what Americans called baby boomers, arrived on the earth, and their intuitions told them that the focus on materialism, on technology alone, was not quite correct. That there was too much pollution, too much corporate influence on government, too much surveillance by the intelligence organizations. This criticism was the normal way that a new generation expands and intuitively leads us forward. They grew up in a hard-won materialism, or in some countries, the desire for the material, and began to react, to voice the idea that there was more to life. There was a spiritual purpose behind human history that could be grasped in more detail. That's what was behind all that happened in the 60s and 70s in the West. The rejection of a material-based system of status, the exploration of other religions, the popularity of philosophy, the explosion in thought of the human potential movement. It was all the result of a series of insights that there was more to life than a material worldview knew. He regarded me with a twinkle, as though he knew everything about my experiences with the insights. The intuitions of the baby boomers were very important, he went on, because they began to put technology and material abundance into perspective, and began to grasp the deep intuition that technology has been developed on this planet to support a culture where we can focus not just on surviving, but on our own spiritual development as well. He paused for a moment. And now, since the late 70s and into the 80s, a new generation has begun arriving to push human culture even further. He looked at Tashi. You and your age group are the final members of this generation. Do you see what emphasis you are bringing into the world? As Tashi pondered the inquiry, I thought about the question myself. The sons and daughters of the boomers have been characterized as reacting to the boomers' idealism and ambivalence towards technology by becoming more practical and in fact developing a love for technology beyond anything seen before. Everyone looked at me as though they had heard my thoughts. Tashi was nodding in agreement. We sense that technology has a spiritual purpose, he said. Now, the older Tibetan continued, looking at all of us. Do you see how the three generations flow together? The World War II generation fought against tyranny and proved that democracy could not only flourish in the modern world, but expand tremendously and connect the world's economies. Then, in the middle of the abundance, the boomers arrived to say that there were problems with this expansion, that we were polluting the natural world and losing touch with nature and a spiritual reality, that it exists beneath the whims of history. And now the next generation has come along to focus again on the economy, to refashion technology so that it can consciously support our mental and spiritual ability, the way it has occurred here in Shambhala, instead of allowing technology to fall solely into the hands of those who could use it to restrict freedom and control others. But this new generation isn't fully conscious of what they are doing, I said. No, not completely, he replied, but this self-awareness and insight is expanding every day. We must set a prayer field that lifts them in this direction. It must be a large and strong field. This new generation must help us unify the religions. This is very important because there will always be controllers ready to manipulate this generation into creating negative uses for technology or taking advantage of their alienation. As we sat there, we all heard the low drone of helicopters again, still far in the distance. The transition is beginning, Tashi's father said, looking at him. There are many preparations to make. I wanted only to convey that the generation you represent must now help push all of us forward. You personally have some role in expanding into the outer cultures what Shambhala has been doing, but only you can decide what you must do. The young man looked away. His father went over and put his arm around him for a moment. Then he embraced Ani and left the house. Tashi followed him with his eyes as he walked through the door and returned alone to his room. Okay, so that's it for me for today. That's part 2 done. Okay, so don't forget to check the links down below. Check the links on my channel. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you know when the next video will be uploaded. Now, you know if you're on Ko-Fi that you're getting the preview before it's made public on YouTube. Okay, so don't forget to keep an eye on the Ko-Fi page if you are part of the Ko-Fi family member, as you will get the previews of the Secret of Shambhala before it's made public on YouTube. Okay, so that's it from me. Take care and blessed be.